Oh,
Well, hello, hello. We're back again for more Other Ink Thursday, and this time I'm joined by another creative duo, the BrightBard Studios crew here. We got co-owners Danann and John Boyle, and they are, one of them's a writer, one of them's an artist. They make games together. They probably do a little bit of everything because that's how co-owners do stuff. And welcome to the two of you to my interview show.
Hi.
hi, it's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us.
Well, yeah, it's going to be one of those interviews where like I haven't played any of your games. I don't have your books on my stack here. I don't have any particular questions about the coolness that I saw in the games. I just am like, yeah, I've seen you at cons and I want to know more, so let's get you on the show and tell me all about yourselves. So, um I'm gonna find out, my audience may be finding out with me all about what Breitbart is and does and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
I think I I don't know. I think you came up to the booth because like it's been so long that we've been working on the Wet Ink has been working with Lucas on Precious Things for a couple years now. I think it
Hmm.
may have been like a year ago at Origins that you came to me, or maybe like a year and a half ago at PAX Unplugged. I
Yeah.
remember you came to me and you were like, I am available for working on Dragons. I hear you're I'm working with Lucas on a Dragons game. I would like to work on the other Dragons game that Lucas is doing. So like
Yeah.
you, Bree, were sort of like, I hesitate to call it forceful, but you were like, I was made aware of your presence by you, who were like, I want you to know about me. And
Yeah.
so that's how I met you is
Yes.
you pitching yourself as for specifically because and like you ended up doing a Dragon game with Lucas,
Hmm.
not Precious Things, but it's I forget the name, it escapes
Bonds
me, but I
between.
that's it. Bonds
Yeah.
Between. That's it. That's it. I can picture the little teacup dragon, but I escaped the name. Anyway, so like clearly I set that up as like that was my introduction to you, and then I've seen you at cons for a few times, and I actually got to talk to you, John, a little bit at this past Origins, and so I've seen you guys around, but like you've already got like a pile of games, and you're going to cons, and like there's a by the time I became aware of you, you're already well established. So I want to go back to the earlier times and figure out like all the way back, right? Like why games? Like why like what made you become a creative in the first place? Like what is and I want each of you to talk about it and then I'll ask you like how you formed your partnership. But
Hmm.
like if either one of you wants to speak first about like why what is it that narrowed you in on games in the first place, like to make them or what?
Oh boy. Yeah. So I became a very I'm pretty young in the industry. Mainly because I've been in the like geekdom circle my whole life, here in the Twin Cities. I was a Renaissance kid, so I used
Hmm.
to work at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival since I was a baby. And so I was like very into the like the acting and the like improv sphere already. And then in
The
high
Ren
school.
Fair to RPG creator
Yeah.
pipeline is very wide.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are making that movement.
Yeah. So, and then in high school, was when Critical Role first started in like 2015. And my brother was like, "Hey, there's this really cool RPG show that you should watch." And so I watched a whole bunch of it, and I got really, really into like the geek and sundry and the RPG sphere through that, online, and through college. And then I started going to Gen Con as just like an attendee, to be like, oh, I really want to like talk to and see all of these really cool creators that I really enjoy, seeing on, the social medias and things. And then through there, I just kind of like, I want to be an artist. I could be an RPG artist. I don't have to be a gallery or artist, or I don't have to like make my own like shop or anything. Like there's so many, like it was a new avenue of art that I was like, this is really cool. And at the time it was like a burgeoning, like we're looking for, it was becoming like the indie sphere is becoming so much bigger. And they were looking for more and more artists to be part of it because like it's like, oh, if you're like want to make a weird thing and not just D&D, we're looking for like artists that do not just D&D art. So I was
Mhm.
like, I could throw my shot here in college. I'm almost graduated. I might as well like shoot my shot and see if I can get hired anywhere. And I wasn't able to
Yeah.
be hired at any companies, but a lot of like indie creators were like, I'm interested in like working with you to like do a few pieces for my game. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, that's really, really cool. I'd love to do that. And so I just kind of started becoming like just a freelance artist like immediately out of college.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess the rest is history. So
Okay.
it was a very natural progression from high school to now of like, well, I might as well I'll just keep following where
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
jobs come to me.
Yeah. It can. I don't know how much your school, because I went to art school. I studied
Mhm.
photography and printmaking and uh, uh, whatever. But like, I don't remember a lot of focus in when I was in art school of like, where will you get a job? Like, it was just sort of like very much like it was more of a fine arts sort of school, and
Yeah.
like, and I'm sure, but also that is. I can imagine an art school that has that sort of thing. But I'll be like, here are the jobs. You should pick one of these because those are the most likely to get hired. So
Yeah.
if you were discovering that this was an avenue right at the end of art school, like, is that, or with through the college process? I guess you didn't say you went to art school. I may have made that fact up. You said college, but like, was there any sort of like, hey, this is a real viable path? Like, look at all these people who need art, that like you were kind of introducing the school to that, or was I mean, I'm kind of inventing a hypothetical, but like I can imagine a situation where there's like that's not real work and you need to focus
Yeah.
on like this corporate, advertising career or whatever instead, and you're like, no, but TTRPGs will be more fun. And again, I may have made up a story, but
I
like,
will
is
say
there
I was
any of
definitely
that?
the weird one. In my fine arts school, I was like it was like I was part of the University of Minnesota and then I was in the like specific like arts college in the university. Um and it was mostly like fine arts and like sculpture based. And then they had a few like drawing things and then like basically when I was like a sophomore, like three different like um interesting classes got added. One of them was a single digital drawing class, an animation class, and a comics class.
All
And
right,
I
all
took
right.
all three of those
Yeah.
multiple times.
All right. Well,
And so my professors were very interested in like getting people out and doing more like weird stuff, like not just like fine art stuff, like oh, like you don't have like don't like if you don't want to go like the gallery or museum route, you
mhm.
don't have to. There are so many other avenues. Like you don't have to be in the product design school to like go do advertising. You don't have to be in the product design school to like do animation. Like a lot of product design people in my college were like going and getting animation jobs because it was like for some reason that was like the avenue in the Twin Cities. But like my professors were like, honestly, there's so many art jobs. Just kind of like go with what you're interested in and like
Yeah.
just don't be afraid to shoot your shot.
Yeah.
And I took that very to heart, and that's how I met you. So like,
Yeah. Right, right. You were coming around with your, cards and portfolio.
yeah,
I don't think you had. I definitely have like people that bring up like the cardboard envelope with the full of the
yeah.
originals or whatever. I don't think you were one of
No,
those, but
I don't do that. I'm just like, just basic. I love the like introduction. Here's my card. If you're interested, reach out to me. And I'm a huge like follow up. If you feel like you made a connection with someone, always follow up.
yeah. Well, it works. You're like I said. I hesitate to call you forceful, but you are. I can't forget that you exist. The way that
Thank you.
you operate. John, I want to turn to you now and ask kind of like what your route is into games, and where's how long of a history do you have with games? What's your first like, this is a thing, like this is a game that I know, I understand that this is a game and it has rules, and I could take it apart, put it back together, and make my own thing. I don't know if you've got any games that are that for you, but like,
I
what's
think
your history?
I think like something I spent a lot of I'm gonna start way back in childhood
Yeah.
also with like I played a lot of Super Metroid as a child.
All right.
Just in like this absolutely like sun-soaked second floor room at my grandma's house. because she ran a daycare, and there was a Super Nintendo sitting on a big trunk, an old CRT television on top of it. And very frequently, when all the other kids in the afternoon would go down for a nap, I would sneak upstairs. Sneak. She knew I went out there. This was the privilege of being the grandson of the daycare provider. But
Right,
and
right.
played a lot of like old Super NES games. One of which was Super Metroid, which is a game that's very like near and dear to my heart. Um, and that game of any of all of the Metroid series is the only one that allows you to like turn your upgrades off, like on and off
Hmm.
during the game, so that you like, can like combine your powers in different ways. And this is like the earliest example I can pinpoint, besides the usual kind of kids like doing imaginative stuff on the playground, where I'm like, I got to just kind of as a kid, like as a youth, mess around with that and be like, ooh, I wonder how I can play the game with this combination of things.
Hmm.
Um, and then it will surprise, I think, absolutely no one to know that as I moved into like high school and college, I was a music and theater kid. Um, so again, the pipeline is very wide
Oh,
from
oh,
from
sure, sure.
theater kids to
Theater and yeah, there's a lot of yeah, plenty of people are yes, we're theater kids. I also did theater in high school. It is I don't know. It's a thing for sure.
I
people who
love
love
telling.
doing bits, people who love playing tabletop role playing games. This Venn
Yeah.
diagram is a circle.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But no, I went into college like as a music major originally, and then graduated with an English degree. And like my kind of intention at the time was to teach English. I had had like a very like writing focused career in college. I was like a tutor, for like a tutor and like a writing teacher for a lot of people. I've been doing that since I was like 18 or 19 years old, and did that into my mid 20s. I was kind of like convinced for a very long time that like, oh yeah, like I played some D&D 3.5 one shots, and like I ran a couple of one shots, and then I like didn't play D&D for a while. And then like the last couple of years of college, my friends started playing 5e, and we got like a consistent campaign of that running. And then I started running my own games. And then when the pan no, yeah, when the pandemic rolled around, um, I was kind of in regular contact with Bree because we had met at Gen Con 2019. And we're talking kind of regularly, and teaching was a thing that was kind of rough for me to like try and continue doing, because I have a chronic illness, and like taking the meds that I take for it, like being in a classroom full of people was kind of hard. So I was starting to look into like what else could I do with this like set of writing skills and this interest in games that I have. And Bree put me onto a games co-op that I started doing a bunch of like freelance editing work for, and then I wound up doing a bunch of like freelance editing work for people who were like doing Zine Quest games. Like a lot of my early like editing portfolio was like a whole truckload of Zine Quest games and like some OSR supplements and stuff like that. And then from there, I was like, well, what if I wrote a game?
What if you wrote a game?
What if I made a game?
Uh, so I mean, is that and then so then that's I assume if you were already working in that sphere and you already knew Bree, then you're like, what if I made a game and also Bree illustrated it, right? I mean, is that the next logical step there, or is that did you try some other artists first? I don't know.
Um, it was I went straight to Bree because the first game that I wrote was a hack of lasers and feelings called Kobolds and Trenchcoats. You have two stats, Kobold and
Yeah,
Trenchcoat.
yeah.
Everybody plays three kobolds, or at least a number of kobolds stacked on
Hmm.
each other's shoulders in a trench coat. And it kind of like inverts the usual like fantasy dynamic of like the adventurers go out and they fight the kobolds and the goblins and the stuff like that and take the loot and then come back. And now the kobolds have had their loot stolen from them, and so it's your job to go and get it back by being little chaos gremlins. Um,
Good concept. Good inversion. I like.
people are still enchanted with it to this day. But yeah, it that was the first game that I wrote, and I was like, I need three cute little guys in a trench coat, and I was like, who do I know that draws cute little guys? Um, and Bree was right there, and I was doing like a little bit of editing work for her webcomic at the time, and so we were kind of just like work trading back and forth a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and this is getting into like the foundation of BrightBard games, but at a certain point of us doing that back and forth for a while of like, yeah, like I can edit like a chapter webcomic, and then I need like a couple pieces of art for this thing that I'm working on. We're like, wait, should we just be business partners?
So, okay, well, yeah, I mean, that was definitely where I wanted to go next, is like how you formed a partnership, but like, is it, so is Breitbart like, does it encompass all of those things? Is it sort of like, a baby version of like a media company that has ambitions to like maybe in theory you like are having a line of graphic novels and a set of video games or not video games, but like role-playing games and like, or is that too grandiose to even think about? Or is it just like, no, like we're making these scenes now? Um, and either of you could take that because like you're kind of both together now.
Listen, if somebody with the capacity to make a 2D Metroidvania platformer walked up to me and said, "Do you want to make one? I know you can't code, but I know you do game design good." I would be like, "Yes, absolutely, I would
Hmm.
Well,
love to."
I
So,
mean, people are still making those. You got to get into different game design circles to than the one you're in. But like people are still
Yeah.
making Metroidvanias for sure.
mhm.
Um,
I mean, as someone that's made comics before in the past, I would definitely be like, it's definitely something that I want to do. There's a, my webcomic, I had to stop it because it wasn't sadly making me enough money for the amount of time that I put into it.
yeah,
And so I had to look for other avenues of income, as a freelance artist. Um, but it is something that I'm very passionate about, and I would really like to get back to it eventually. So I'm very excited to see all of the like. I'm really excited. I love storytelling, and that's why we are making games in a lot of ways. We love telling stories, and especially from like weird and interesting places. Because a lot of our games are things that I don't think many people would think of like, oh, that's such a cool idea, or like that's such a weird mishmash of like cute things. And I'm
hmm.
like, yeah, it's just silly and fun, and you make a fun story out of it. And we very much come from a like make game design for storytelling rather than like let's do a like John is very crunchy in his ways, but like it's very for the story feel of it.
Yeah,
Of the game and like the improv and play that you can do with it and like how free it feels.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, John.
I was gonna say, I think there's definitely an element to my game design where like I crave like a slightly crunchy story game, because like the teacher part of me
Mm,
likes when there are like avenues by which the game prompts you to do something, which a lot of people who are very like already have a lot of foundational skills in like improv and role play and stuff like jump straight to. But I always think of Bree, like a couple of our friends, like Henry and Allison, who have like played a role playing game exactly once, and it was one of ours. I'm like, what, if Brian or if Henry and Allison want to like pick up a role playing game for the first time, like how can I kind of like provide some foundational elements for them to jump off of, which introduces like a slightly higher level of crunch than I think some story games shoot for. But I usually do it like kind of in service of like here's a scaffold for you to like
mm,
climb up as you learn to kind of do this.
Mm.
Um,
yeah. I had a conversation with uh Cody Gazaga like earlier this year and they were talking about storytelling crunch, like making a game that had where the like it wasn't a complicated like facing position and I'm going to slide you one square so that I can my friend can then backstab you with it's like there's a lot of crunchy mechanics when you're
mhm.
positioning and simulating a fight, but they were talking about like no, I want like messy entanglements between like multiple characters, and so I want like crunchy storytelling rules, and so
Hmm.
um it's definitely a thing that people are thinking about. So you're in good company, I guess. I do want to ask you about like some of the particulars about games, but I think maybe still when we're kind of talking about businessy kind of stuff, maybe I want to ask about going to cons and what that's like because I feel like I didn't really go to cons until I had product to sell. It just wasn't like part of my life. And then so
Hmm.
like almost my entire con experience is like going and standing behind a stack of books and like, making the transactions all day.
Yeah.
And we've always had books, and then we've got booths, and then we got our own booths, and then we got bigger booths and stuff like that. But like it's so like I see people who are coming behind me, and they're like sort of more. I almost like feel like people. It's not a kids these days kind of thing, but like a lot of these younger creators are like they're like, oh, I have like 3 zines. I should get a booth and like sell the zines at the booth. And I'm like, when I, when I was coming up, I mean, that's like only, I'm talking about like, you're saying 2019 is your first Gen Con. Like 2019
Mhm.
was also my first Gen Con because that was like when I had books to sell.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's not that long ago, but like, it's like, it just feels like you should have more stuff and bigger stuff before you
Mhm.
try to have a booth, especially at a big con. But then like I've met so many creators who are like, nah, it's fine. We'll just take what we have. And then like so like I'm not saying that you're wrong or that anybody's wrong. It's just like what was behind that idea to like it seems ambitious to like
Yeah.
but like then you're talking about you got to shoot your shot. So like I guess you got some zines, take them to the con and have a booth and sell because I mean I basically had the same conversation with Jordan who you were sharing the booth with at Origins.
Hmm.
I basically had the same conversation with him. I'm like, you have like a stack of zines and you're going to like every show in the country this year, and he's like, yeah, I guess you can't sell them unless you go to shows. And I'm like, you're right, but like it just seems so. I don't know. How do you see it? Because obviously I'm looking at it from a certain perspective and questioning it, but it makes sense to you all. So like, why does it make sense to go ahead and be at a con even though you have like a relatively small selection of relatively small games? I mean, I mean, is it just as simple as like you can't sell them unless you go to the show, like Jordan said, or is there more to your con strategy, I guess?
It's like I think it's a combination of both of those things where it's like, of opportunity and both and then like the desire to be like, to have an avenue to get those out there because like conventions are also very, very good, not just for like selling directly to people, but for meeting a lot of like retailers and distributors and stuff. And
Hmm.
that's like sort of a multiplicative way to be like, hey, like now there's a game store that picks up, 20 or 30 because we have a few different games. They'll pick up like, a few of each, and now that's another game store that's like, hey, like here's some cool zines that this group of people who might not otherwise have found out about us have access to. But like in many ways, BrightBard Games and us being at Gen Con this year dates back to us coming to Gen Con as attendees in 2019 and attending a mall kids meetup.
Yeah.
Because like we went to a mall kids meetup. That's where I met Bree. Bree and I wound up playing D&D that evening with like some mutual friends of ours. And we stayed in touch with Matthew Gravlin. And then in 2021, when Gen Con was coming back to in
Mhm.
person for the first time, or 2022, I think was the first time that I did this.
Yeah.
Um,
2022.
2022, Matthew was helping organize Possum Creek Games' booth, and they needed an extra booth worker. And Matthew was like, "Hey, would you be interested?" So I ended up tagging along there and just kind of like bring. They were kind enough to like let me bring along some of like the one-page RPGs and stuff that I had at that time and sell them out of the booth, which was like kind of a great opportunity there in that like I wasn't invested in a Gen Con booth, which is very, very expensive, but I was like,
Mm.
essentially peddling my games out of their booth. Um, and then, from there, a couple of years later, we were still working with them. And there was like a bit of a logistics snafu at the last second last year where Possum Creek was trying to kind of like cut as many costs as they could and were interested in like formally splitting their booth. And so Bree and I kind of looked at each other and went, well, the opportunity to split the Gen Con booth doesn't come around super often.
Right.
And so, it was already kind of in our plans. We had several like zines that were on the back burner between like Axolotl with a gun and LGBT longsword Glockbat taser, um, that we'd kind of been cooking in addition to the solo duet RPG we'd published. And so we were like, well, we could just make those
Yeah.
right now.
All you got to do is just make some zines.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah.
and so we just sort of entered this fugue state.
For like
Where
a month and a half, when we learned that we were splitting a booth with Possum Creek Games, to Gen Con. Um, Fugue State for a month and a half, producing 3 books.
Yeah.
Um, doing all the art, laying it out, and printing all of them.
Yeah. I mean,
and that
that's a lot. That's a lot to
Yeah.
do in that rapid amount of time.
thankfully like sort of small games individually, but when you're doing several of them at once, like it sort of compounds on itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
Um,
But yeah, it was really good. Like, uh, honestly, to answer your question of like why small people go to con, is because it's great marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a marketing cost, and then you also get to sell. You also maybe get to recoup that cost by
Mm-hmm.
selling your work. Plus it also lets you meet really cool people like that are also in the industry, because the TTRPG industry is a lot more about like kind of like the connections you have. Like it's not like, oh, you can't come in if you don't have connections, but it's like it's really important to make connections,
Yeah.
because it's such a social hobby. Like it's such a social like industry, and it's such a social hobby that people want to interface directly. And that it's so much more meaningful to like walk up to a person and tell them that you really appreciate their work and are really admiring their work, or and would like to work with them in the future,
Mm-hmm.
um in person, than just like shooting them an email.
Right.
Because they would have to like follow up to figure out who you are, and like, oh, this could be a scam or anything like that, especially in this day and age. And it's like it's so much more important to like be interfacing physically with people,
Yeah.
and being able to sell your work while doing that is also like very awesome, because then you can recoup costs and like slowly build the your profit margins for your eventual business, even if you have like small games.
Yeah.
And uh a lot of people are like very like, how do you make money selling zines? And I'm like, well, a lot of people actually really love zines, like
Yeah.
especially people that are like in the board gaming industry, that are like, oh, I've only played a board game, but I've thought about getting into TTRPGs, but D&D is like so big, or
Right.
like these
It
big
can't
books are
handle a
like
200
so,
page book, but
yeah,
this one's only
yeah,
12 pages.
this is only 12 pages, so I could like pick it up and play. And I say that to a lot of people. Like we design our tabletop role playing games like board games, that you can take it up off the shelf, read the
Mm.
rules real quick, and play it in 2 hours. So it's like, instead of like, oh, this is like a commitment of like
Mm-hmm.
multiple hours, the GM has to sit and plan a whole thing. Our games, like we have like sample adventures in the back, and like a bunch of different things that you can basically just like take the book off the shelf and start playing immediately.
Yeah.
And that is a huge selling point, especially knowing like our audience, to be like, yeah, I think like, oh, I'm not like super into TTRPGs, or like, is this good for kids? Is this like people that like to like spark that, or like people are like, I don't have a lot of people to play with. Can I play this by myself? Also is a huge thing. And so we kind of like get a lot of those like people that like don't get to find a lot of things at like big game companies. They will come to
Hmm.
us and be like, so like we are, volume of sale over like, but spend like showing like a huge book to somebody.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And like,
I
yeah,
mean, if you're unsure whether you are a role player yet or not, and you see a, $60 price tag, you may not want to spend $60 to find out, but you might spend,
$20.
$15 to find out,
Yeah.
yeah.
20 to
Uh,
15 to 20. It's like that's not a bad
yeah.
thing to like just like invest in. Like, yeah, it's the lower price tags make larger businesses that are like, well, how could you do this? It's like, well, I mean, we're a smaller business, and we also have a lot of smaller costs.
Yeah, yeah.
We also don't have we don't have any other employees other than us.
Right.
So
7 times landed cost when you're printing smaller things is less than when you're printing bigger things.
yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, unless you're printing like 20,000 copies at once, then it's like, $1 for a book. But like,
Yeah. Hmm.
nobody's there. I mean, very few people are at that level. Well, I
Right.
really appreciate you giving those perspectives. Don't want to like, we've talked a lot about like kind of maybe the vibes of your games, and like you were just kind of getting into like some of your selling points, but like tell us specifically about some of your games. Like maybe each of you pick like one that is a favorite that came either as a final product, or like that sold really well or has been selling well? Like, I don't know how you just tell us about some of your games and what like they are. I mean, you mentioned a couple of them, John, the
Mhm.
names of them.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, just to tell us about some of your games.
Oh,
I mean,
Bree, is
you don't
there?
have to pick. I don't want to. I'm sorry to
I
make you
mean, we
pick your
should
favorite.
100%
Like,
mention Axolotl with a gun.
I
Um,
think Axolotl with a gun must be mentioned.
it's
May I grab it off my shelf real
yeah,
quick?
go for it.
sure, sure. It's a great name.
It's a great name, and it pulls people into a Gen Con booth, or like we sometimes even like do like local shows or like markets and stuff
Mhm.
here. Because I'm also an artist and I sell like my prints and my stickers in places as well, so we'll bring our games and sell them as there as well. And the amount of times someone is not sold on being a TTRPG person, and then they see Axolotl with a gun, and they're like, I could be a TTRPG person.
For that, I could play tabletop
For
role-playing
that,
game.
I could play tabletop role playing games, and that was one of our games that we made in that month and a half last
Mm.
year. And it has been our one of our best sellers in total of all of the games that we have created over years, which is crazy and awesome, but also means that we are like, how do we make hit that magic twice?
Yeah, truly. Because it was a game that Bree hit on something earlier where she was talking about like we design our tabletop role playing games with like the board game experience being able to pull it off the shelf and play it. I think like it's fair to say that a good chunk of our video games or our tabletop games are a little bit video game inspired. And so like Axolotl with a gun is what I always describe to people as like arcade style role playing, where like you just kind of play fast and loose. You mash the buttons by way of rolling lots of d6, and then like tossing them around the table. And if your character gets knocked out, it's kind of just like a insert coin. Your character pops back in, like blinks with some iframes, and like a cool eye patch or something, and then you're like back into the action. Um,
Is there actually
but
like a currency mechanic like that? You only come to the table with like 7 quarters and you can only recharge
We
yourself
could.
so
There's
often.
not
Like,
yet, but we should.
it was
We've made so many, like we could make this an expansion to Axolotl with a gun. We could make this a game mode in Axolotl with a gun, and
because
that would be fucking
there's
awesome.
there's definitely like games where and I don't you haven't told me how to play the game yet, but like it is there's definitely games where there's like everybody starts with like 3 coins or whatever, and you're passing currency to each other to like do actions or whatever, and then if you've got enough currency, then you have to do an action or whatever and pass out, whatever. I mean, there's different ways to bring like a storytelling rule set
Mhm.
to putting in another quarter. I don't know. Um,
Yeah. Well,
you could
like
have that idea for free.
that it was already in the kind of like in my draft of the game because we published them like kind of in a big rush last year, and now this year we're having them professionally edited,
Hmm.
which gives us the opportunity. We're lucky enough that the games have sold well enough that we have the opportunity to like revisit them and be like, is there anything that we want to like touch up, anything that we missed that kind of in the hectic like rush of publishing these last summer that we'd like to add or like include or alter a little bit. And that was one of the things that I had like written a comment. I was like, what if you handed the GM a quarter? Or a coin or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I was letting that cook as part of the second
I,
edition that'll probably
I
be
mean,
coming
it,
out later
it
this
it
summer.
sounds exciting to me, but tell us more about the game. Like, tell me more about the
Mhm.
actual how it works in the edition rather than speculating about future editions.
No, we're designing a new part of the game now.
Right on live on the recording. No, so the way that the game works, it's a D6 dice pool system.
Right.
I was a little bit inspired by Spencer Campbell's like Slayers with the asymmetry between character classes. So your character has two sets, axolotl and gun. They each start at a number between 1 and 6. If you roll under your number, you're successful. Each time you make a roll, either axolotl or gun, that stat will reduce. Because a cool thing about these weird little salamanders is that they are technically amphibians in that they are capable of breathing on land, but they will dry out very rapidly if they are outside of water. So like that's kind of like what that system of the game represents. And then you choose a gun. which modifies how your dice pool works. There's six different options. So like the rocket launcher will make it so that instead of rolling crits only when you roll exactly your number for that stat, you roll crits adjacent to it too because it has splash damage, but also you can't roll successes otherwise. You only roll crits, but you have a bigger crit range. Or like one of the guns has like exploding dice, or another one like you can sequence your dice to like build up a big combo meter and hit a huge crit at the end of it. Um, and then the like axolotl hobbies kind of serve as a way as a more like narrative, like a few extra bonus dice as part of your pool, and then also are a little bit of like narrative inspiration. So it's the intersection of like a side-scrolling like shoot 'em up arcade game, and then like oh also you can skateboard and do K-pop dances. So like what do you do with these things as a tiny little guy who's fighting these evil machines that are trying to like destroy your habitat in some way?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And I assume there's accompanying illustrations of axolotls with these various types of guns. Bree.
Yeah, yes. I will be drawing a whole bunch more, but yeah, I have so far there's a little axolotl with like a little like knitted parachute and like
Yeah, let me
there's a lot of really yeah, there he is. Um very very cute little things in the thing. So there's a lot of like cute little illustrations in there. And we like making our games cute because a cute kind of like is great for like a wide range of audience. Like people aren't going to be like, "Oh, I hate cute things." Uh, like
Every once in a while, you get somebody that,
every once in a while. But it's like a guy that's like, "I don't want to admit that I like cute things" type
oh,
of.
okay. Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
I think you might be right about that one. Uh,
I think like and the foes that you face in Axolotl with Gun to kind of like wrap up the summary of the game are all like kind of um mechanical like horrors or robots or things like that, which to me made it like slightly more kid friendly in the
hmm.
themes of it. But um, most of the issues that we kind of like propose are centered or loosely based on like the environmental impacts that like big tech companies tend to have on the environment. The sample adventure is about like a bunch of mecha raptors that are trying to like suck up all of the axolotl's lake water to use as coolant for like a data center so that they'll make
Yeah,
like a
that's not
giant
topical
like
at all.
Godzilla. Yeah,
Not topical
no.
at all. No, all of our games might be cute, but there is a sense of environmental radicalism in there in a lot of them.
Right. I mean, even picking something like an axolotl, which is like maybe extinct in the wild, question mark.
Yes.
Like it's very much a. I mean, I was talking. I mean, this is something that from my most recent release is Garbage and Glory, which is raccoons, and there's like just this tiny little thread that ended up in the book about kind of how Western civilization making trash in the first place has like destroyed the previous culture of the raccoons, and now like
Yeah.
the story that you're playing is like a is sort of like a fallen world in a way, but that's not really what the game is about, but like it's like
But
this
it's
little
there.
background thread or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm.
But this feels like a little stronger, like
Yeah.
you're foregrounding that message a little bit more with
Mhm.
even picking axolotls in the first place, and then having this backstory of it's their environment versus cooling systems. Yeah, I don't know. That's I mean, good. Sounds great.
Yeah.
And like, what kind of like is there? I don't know. You talked before about like story stuff and like kind of wanting to have sort of crunchy ways to tell stories. Is there sort of like stakes for the characters, or is it a little bit more this is just roll the dice and see what happens and have a fun time, or are there like you know I don't know, but you pick a best friend who might get imperiled if you don't defeat the robots, or like I don't know, like what kind of is there a like wrenching story beats in the game as well?
Um, Axolotl with a Gun is definitely like more on the side of like whimsical power fantasy stuff, in terms of like the way it runs mechanically. But the GM has a lot of like leeway because functionally you're, as the axolotls, you're spending your dice to fill up clocks, and when the clock fills up, the scene ends. Um, and so you as the GM can kind of like calibrate how serious you want that story to be or how whimsical you want it to be. Typically, when I run it at cons, it tends to be very whimsical because I'm like, we have 90 minutes to play this game. Whoever says the funniest thing, that's what I'm riffing off of.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's con games for sure.
but yeah, like depending on kind of what directions you want to take the game inherently has a fairly whimsical concept. But there is like kind of that little undertone, I think, always there to be explored of like, the environmental fallout of what us people are doing.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's a lot like Axel the Gun at this in this current iteration that we are selling because we made it in a month and a half. Um has a lot less of those story plucks that you can do, but we are planning on doing more of a like this is like a one shot sort of thing, and we are planning on doing more of like a campaign style one that has more
Hmm.
of that like story plucks because we made a game recently that is coming out at Gen Con called Trash to Treasure, which also has a lot of the eco fantasy environmental radicalism part of it. In it, which is a magical girl goblin game.
Oh my gosh, what a great mashup.
I know, right? You are a
Oh,
bunch
so do
of
the people change into goblins after their magical girl transformation, or the
they
goblins
start out
get
as
magical
goblins.
transformations?
They're goblins that are magical girls.
Okay.
They have they basically have like trash outfits where like so they're like very like like the grungy goblin vibe, and then they are like have like trash powers, and they like consume trash to get their powers back
All
like
right.
into
These are
like
all
their
good
outfit.
ideas. I like all of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And so it's like magical girl goblins. It's called Trash to Treasure, like basically riffing on the like some one person's trash is another person's treasure,
Hmm.
and like very much in the like recycling, reuse your stuff, thrifting sort of thing as like not like trash is bad, but it can be good for other people or like reuse your waste sort of thing. And that's kind of like their like concept as like characters, and then there's an entire five chapter five chapter campaign plus a prologue and an epilogue, which is kind of like designed like an anime season.
Mm.
um where you like basically the girls get their powers and then go on this like adventure through their city to stop and discover why all of these like dragons are rampaging through their city, and like why all of this like mechanized problems are happening, or why these drones filled with smog, or why there's algae elementals now running rampant, and they're trying to like save their city from this like increased amount of pollution um, that they are that is like hurting the city. So it's like
Yeah.
all of the different like pollution elements. So there's like fire is like the first thing you like go across. So like they're like burning buildings, but also like melting a bunch of trash to like pollute the groundwater, and then like then there's like the earth aspect of it where it's like getting rid of like all of the like it's kind of a gentrification allegory
Mm.
and like getting rid of like local gardens and like local eateries to like make sky rises and things like that. And then there's the water one, which is like algae pollution
Mm.
and like um you know trapping uh
Eh,
like fish and like making having things like be I forgot the word, but like when an animal comes into a place that you're not supposed to be there.
Oh, the invasive species.
Species, thank you.
Uh,
And then there's air, which is like air pollution,
mm.
smog, classic haze problems.
Right,
And then
right.
chapter five is kind of all of those things together.
Okay. Just yeah, just make it worse.
Yeah.
So like I have two questions. One is that like this sounds like a bigger book, like
Yes.
if you've got a campaign in there, this is going to be maybe your first sort of like breaking that like if you make a zine and it's 64 pages, like can you still call that a zine? Maybe, but like if you go beyond that, I think you're not making a zine anymore.
Yeah.
So is this going to push that limit? Are you into like books now?
Yeah.
Or
This
is
is this
that
is this is what I would say would be our first. We have like two other books that are like in the 30 range.
okay?
They had to be like the 30-60 range that are perfect bound. So we call those our books. So like zines are like the saddle stitch ones, and then we have our books which are perfect bound. This one is 140 pages.
All right. So
Um
yeah, just like that's a book. That's
that's a
that's
book.
not even pretending to
It's a
be a zine.
book.
That's a book.
It's
So yeah, this is our first book. And we crowdfunded it last year in the fall, and then have been working on it for the last like 6 months, and finally got all of our books of it. I literally during this email got the message from our printer that they are ready to be picked up. So
All right. Excellent. So they definitely will be, as we're recording this video will appear after Gen Con, but
yes,
it's being recorded before Gen Con.
but
So
yeah,
time
yeah.
is time
If you're on
happens.
the internet right now and backed our Kickstarter, you'll be getting yours very soon after you watch this.
Uh, yeah, and you'll get to share your links all here in
Yeah,
just
yeah,
a very short little bit. The other thing I wanted to ask about Trash to Treasure is like
yeah.
what kind of like system is it using? Is it a similar dice pool system that you described for Axolotl with a gun, or is it like did you bring in other elements to explore like cards, maybe a card based you make a deck of 8 cards and then that's going to be your story and each card suit means something or I don't know what kind of rules are you using to progress these goblins and have their magical girl powers. They've got powers, right? They don't just
Yeah,
like
Mhm.
have trashy outfits, right?
yeah. They got powers.
Yeah.
um cards is kind of like what I'm dipping into with some games I have on the back burner. But if we start talking about those, I'll never start. I'll never
Yeah.
stop
Well,
Don't get
talking
them
okay.
about
started on
them.
Well,
cards. Don't get
yeah.
them started on cards.
Don't start on
But
cards.
with Trash to Treasure, we based it kind of uh, loosely on Roanoke and Deckard's Eat the Reich. So like all of the characters are like pre-generated magical girls, and as you kind of like romp through the city and rescue each of like the
Mm.
imperiled like draconic guardians of each element, who become your little magical girl familiars. You kind of gain power, and so like the girls start with like a limited set of abilities that as you rescue more dragons, you unlock more and more of those. And when you rescue your like familiar in particular, then like you gain a cool familiar ability that's unique to your character. Um, and so it's a much more like mechanically robust, but still kind of like story powered version of the stuff in Axolotl of the dice pool mechanics in Axolotl with a gun. Like all of the girls have 6 different character stats that represent like an approach that they can take each round in a scene. Do you want to like approach the situation with empathy? Do you want to fight about it? Do you want to like use magic or something else to try and like restore an aspect of the environment? So you'll build a dice pool off of those things. And then your character's gear, which tends to be like very garbage themed. Like one of uh, this was before we started the recording, but the last time that I used Zoom, I was playing one of these characters,
Mm.
Bernie, and Bernie's the fire themed trash goblin. So she's got like a trash bin shield and she's got like a garbage bag dress. And when you use those items in certain ways, they'll have like little narrative tags next to them. And so if you describe your character using that item in a certain way, then you'll gain some more bonus dice, which is essentially like my way as the game designer or the GM of rewarding you, the player, for being more descriptive and imaginative with how your character interacts, um, with a few more dice. And then you take that pool of initial dice and kind of filter them through your abilities. So like it might be like spend a die to gain a trash, like scavenge for something, and then spend that trash to activate an ability to damage an enemy or like heal an ally, or maybe like strip some of the challenge or like armor off of a particularly powerful foe. Um,
Is
it's
it?
very. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, good.
I was gonna say I've had it likened several times to like Slay the Spire, in terms of the way that your character like mechanically works. In that
Mm.
like you build a pool of resources and then you kind of filter those resources through your deck of cards, like depending on like do I have some crits this round that I can spend to activate these abilities? How much trash do I have? Would it be better to spend like the trash here and like activate my ability, like activate this ability? Do I think it would be more narratively appropriate to do this? You know,
It sounds, sort of an appealing puzzle sort of
Mhm.
aspect. You mentioned Spencer Campbell earlier. I've just been playing Rune by Spencer Campbell, and it has, you know, you've got cards that are my sword will do one damage on a, does nothing on a one, does one damage on a two. I can do two damage on a three, four, or five, and then, if I can assign a six to it, then it does three damage, right? So it's like, it's you've got to roll your dice and then decide how to allocate based on your equipment what you're actually going to be able to do that round. So anyway, it sounds vaguely similar to that in that you've got sets of dice that are you're assigning out to do different things, and possibly every die is useful, but like maybe less useful than ideal. Is it sounds like that's what's going on, and the appeal is in like making the best action you can for your
hmm
your turn.
yeah, and then like as you kind of like make those choices, you'll be prompted by your character's abilities again. Those little like kind of narrative tags, like here, I'll give you a bonus die if you describe your character like using it in this way. And it adds a fun aspect of negotiation with the GM too, where you're like, do we think at this moment I could use this old like discarded Nokia phone as a projectile, like or do we think I could use this item in this way? And I
Yeah.
think it's just I really, in my experience playtesting the game, it's been really fun to see how that kind of like system of rewarding you with just a few extra dice for adding details to a scene will give other players more details to riff off of on their
Hmm,
turns,
hmm.
which gives me more to riff off of as the GM. And so just kind of like it's this reciprocal kind of storytelling mechanic where
Yeah.
you add a bunch of details, which gives me, the GM, like something new to describe, or I can like complicate the scene or introduce new objectives for you to tackle.
When it's also like kind of trying to keep the theme, reinforcing the theme, right? So like the actions you're doing are, I mean, you can theoretically do whatever you want in a game, but it's like, but you'll get rewarded bone mechanically if you're keeping it in the bounds that we've set for the theme of the game, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, I've kind of put like guardrails on the outside, where
Yeah.
I'm like, if you stay within these, or like if you kind of like, actually, I think Matthew Gravin has talked about game design before as being like creating a set of axes and then like labeling them and filling them with data points, for people to kind of like refer to, and then like your hands off at that point. So to me, like I've got Trash Goblin, Magical Girl, and then like the little suggestion, like role play suggestions that we have for extra dice are just like a few little data points in there to give you an extra little like details to latch onto.
Hmm. It's interesting that, I mean, I don't know, the thing, it's interesting, certainly an interesting way to think about a game like that scatterplot kind of methodology. That's I don't think I've thought of that as like a keeping on theme kind of thing. Um, all right. Well, we don't have too much more time in this interview. I do want to get you to talk about like your social media and that kind of stuff. Like, where can people get your games when it isn't Gen Con? But if there's but before any of that,
Mhm.
if you've got anything else you want to say about, about Trash to Treasure, just any other any closing thoughts you want to have about that, and if not, we can just, I don't know. Like, I don't want you,
I
I don't
could
want you
talk
to be
for, I mean,
done. I'm
again,
not cutting
it's
you
so
off.
hard because you could talk
I
for
have
hours about the things that you make. Like I have
Sure.
so many, like there's other games that we're bringing to Gen Con. There's two other releases that are going to be brand new to Gen Con. We've talked a lot about our like more crunchy like dice pool games, but we also have games that are like we kind of either have like two games. It's like you are a silly little guy fighting God with like dice mechanics,
Uh-huh.
or you are doing a journaling game, and
Mm.
you are being contemplative about the world around you and your physical presence in a moment. So we have two very different
Yeah, those
genre
are.
fantasies that like give you
Mm.
different things. And so for Gen Con, we released Treasure Treasure and Bonds Between, which is a game that we worked on with Lucas and Emily of Graftbound, which is also a dragon game, and that is more in the like contemplative card-based art game. So we basically have those two sets of things. So like Axolotl
Yeah.
with the gun, Trash or Treasure, Longsword, Glockbat, Taser / LGBT are very much in the like you're a little guy fighting God sort of scenario, and then like Terminus and Bonds Between and Beloved are very much like you are in a being present in a moment and
Yeah.
telling a story about the moment you're in.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I know I looked at some of those solo. I love a solo experience game. So
Yeah.
those are that sounds appealing. Yeah. Uh, all right. So I think now maybe it's time to wrap up and say where people can find your games. You've all the games. Where are they? Where do they live? Where do you talk about stuff? Where do you share pictures of real axolotls on the internet? I don't know. Where else? Where should people go if they want to know more about what you're up to?
We're BrightBard at BrightBard Games on Bluesky and Instagram. Those are the socials you can find us on, and I think also Facebook.
Yeah, and
Um,
Facebook. Technically, anything we post on Instagram goes to Facebook. So technically, also Facebook.
It's
yeah.
it's all it's all under one
All the
house
same,
now.
meta. Um,
But we also have a website, which actually about an hour ago at the very start of this interview, an email went out to our mailing list to let people know about that. We have brightbardgames.com is where you can find all of our games. You can
Hey,
pre-order all of our summer releases there right now, and all of our other catalog are up for purchase. Um, Again, as of the time, this will come out after Gen Con.
yeah,
But yeah, so those will be up for regular order by then.
yeah,
Um,
nice.
yeah, that's
yeah,
that's where you can find us like together. I'm at ResidentBard. I'm mostly on Blue Sky. If you want to see me take pretty pictures of things, because I photography is my kind of creative hobby that I don't monetize.
Yeah, it's good to
Um,
have one that you don't
yeah, one,
monetize.
you gotta have one. I post a lot of that on like my Instagram story and stuff like that. But
All right, nice.
and personally, I am at Danann on both Blue Sky and Instagram. I'm pretty frequent on both of those things. Instagram is where I post all of my art. Blue Sky, I also post a lot of art on, but also other musings and it's more TTRPG focused on my Blue Sky, and then Instagram is kind of like all of the art that I do and like the places that I'm gonna be like tabling and things like that. So if you want me as an artist, Instagram. If you want me as a TTRPG artist, Blue Sky.
Well, there you go. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. That's a great. I'll put all of those links to those things in the description of this video. And I want to thank you both for being giving your time today to talk to me about your company and your designs. It's very exciting to like learn more. And I love I mean, nobody in the TTRPG industry does this because they're like sad that they got trapped into doing it. Like everybody's
No.
here to like they're excited about it. So I
Mhm.
love to talk to creators that are excited about what they're doing and they're thinking big thoughts about their things. So like I think both of you really brought that kind of energy. So I really appreciate that. And I want to thank everybody who watched the video for watching. And what weapon would your axolotl carry? Put that in the comments of this video so that you
Yeah.
can participate in fighting your own little fight against the the climate crisis with whatever weapon of your choice. Um, all right. Thank you so much. We'll see you around and well, and I will see you at Gen Con and then
yeah,
Yeah.
in one
anybody
calendar
else.
week.
That's right, right. It's literally like, yeah, 1 week from today is will be
is set up.
it,
Woo. Or is
oh,
day one. Setup was
day one.
yesterday.
Day
Oh
one is a
god.
week from the time we're recording. We're less than a week to go at the time of recording. Uh, but
Yeah.
this is we're probably going to continue this conversation, but I'm going to stop the recording.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next
Bye.
time.